All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 13 of Interoperability Unlocked. This is where we share insights from the intersection of trust and community, and of course, all things health data. I'm Courtney Baker, marketing manager here at Commonwealth, and I'm joined by Liz Lewis, our director of product. So today we are talking about information blocking, including the latest announcement from HHS that signifies a crackdown on health information blocking is coming. So to get us started, Liz, can you kind of give us a little history of information blocking before we kind of dig into the latest update?
Yeah, for sure. So info blocking came out of 21st Century Cures. So we've talked a lot in this show about TEFCA and TEFCA's origins coming out of 21st Century Cures Act 2016. Info blocking was the other thing that came out of 21st Century Cures that directly went to ONC to do something with this, right? They had this requirement and then ONC has to like make it real. And, TEFCA floundered for a bit and we finally, have that off the ground. It's been going now for almost 2 years, which is fantastic. But info blocking never really made any real significant progress. It didn't really have teeth. So ASTP ONC has this online portal where people can go in and say, like, I want to make an info blocking claim against whatever party. And they've accumulated quite a number of info blocking claims, but there hasn't been any enforcement of that. So this new press release that came out was interesting and definitely caught my attention because, they're saying ASTP and OIG are going to begin to work together on the actual enforcement of info blocking. So that's interesting. I think that's good news, to be quite honest. But I did want to just give like a brief history of info blocking for those who have heard about it, but are like, I don't really know exactly what this is. So very briefly, info blocking is basically, there's 3 types of actors. So providers, healthcare providers are a type of actor that can be named in an info blocking claim. Health IT developers that specifically develop certified EHR technology that they certify with ONC, they can be named as an actor. And then HIEs and HINs, so health information exchanges, health information networks, like Commonwealth, are a type of actor in info blocking. And basically it says at a very high level, like, from a health IT and HIE, HIN perspective, this is when you're like knowingly and unreasonably interfering with access or exchange of EHI, electronic health information. For providers, it can be like, whether they know it or should know type of thing. Like it's hard to stand behind like, oh, I didn't know. So there's some nuance there between whether you knowingly were doing it or whether you like kind of as a mom, you're like, well, you should have known better type of thing. So there's some nuance there. And we'll talk a little bit later about, I think, what some of the challenges are going to be in this enforcement. But there's some pretty significant penalties if you are, found to have been doing info blocking. So for health IT developers of certified EHR technology or CERT, or for HIEs, HINs, it can be a $1 million penalty per incident or per claim of info blocking. So that's pretty significant. That could add up very quickly, right? And so these are things that we have been taking seriously and should continue to take seriously, especially as we move into kind of this new era of potential enforcement. And then for providers, for the most part, the kind of penalty or punishment is federal programs that they get, that they participate in, there will be disincentives. So things like CMS, they won't get the types of reimbursements and things like that they would have normally expected. So it's sort of like the reverse on providers, but they are, that's still a significant penalty. So definitely something that we should be taking seriously. So
absolutely. Do you think this news like signifies that there's been like misunderstandings in info blocking happening already?
Yeah, I don't know if that was the intent of the
Yeah.
press release. Maybe it was. But first, I think the short answer is yes. I think there has been some misunderstandings about info blocking and just sort of how it works. So I do, first of all, I think the announcement is great. And kudos to ASTP for putting it out there. And I want to make sure I say that publicly so that, Steve Posnick doesn't come banging on my door, angry about anything I say on this LinkedIn Live session. But in all seriousness, I do think it's a good message to be putting out there. And I was just in DC a couple months ago talking about this very thing about, it's this thing, info blocking is this thing that exists, but we can't really do anything with it. And then second, as far as the misunderstandings, I think that there is a general unawareness of the lack of enforcement that's taken place. So there have been, I think, like 1,400, give or take, claims of info blocking that have been submitted to ASTP in the portal. And there hasn't been any penalty that we've been made aware of any of those claims. Now, some of the things to think about are some of the penalties. So we had info blocking like 2021 that was sort of finalized, but it wasn't until 2 years ago that the civil monetary penalties were published for health IT developers, and that kind of became codified. And then last year, provider disincentives were announced, and some additional like Medicare disincentives were just announced January 1 of this year. So it has been in the background kind of this like building block of how to enforce. But what I really think it comes down to is just starting to understand the types of claims that have been made and which ones OIG believes constitute information blocking. I think that's going to be really interesting for us to start seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. Does HHS's new sort of stance on information blocking in practice, what does it mean for like the key players that you were mentioning earlier, the providers, the payers, and the like developers? And what does it mean for them first? And then when might we see like penalties actually being enforced, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. It's obviously hard to say. I think, the message in this press release was, here's what we're going to do, versus a press release that says, here's what we've done and here's the outcome. Right? And so there's a lot still that we just have to sort of wait and see. I think providers, payers, and health IT developers have a new motivation, if you will, to go back and look at the actual information blocking rule and make sure that they're in compliance with that rule. First and foremost, I think, that's best practice. But I think, I think we aren't going to see, in my opinion, penalties just start getting handed out like candy bars on Halloween. Like, we're not going to see from my opinion. That just does not seem, just knowing how the government works and knowing, what limited knowledge I have, right? But knowing enough about how the government works, I don't think we're going to start seeing penalties left and right. I hope that ASTP and OIG work collaboratively to share information about the types of claims that they've received and provide examples to the broader community, which they have done in the past. But I think it's time for a refresher, especially given what they've learned over the collection of these 1,300, 1,400 claims. And, sort of offer like warnings to the community, like, hey, don't do this. This is an example of what not to do. Make sure you're not doing this type of thing.
Right.
But I expect to see, and hope to see in real investigations take place with some information shared publicly in the near term. But I think it'll be some time before we see real penalties be assessed.
Yeah, just some real transparency moving forward. Okay, so we know obviously patients are guaranteed access to their health records under the 21st Century Cures Act. But we know that it's not necessarily being practiced that way to make it easier for them, essentially. What are the biggest kind of barriers that patients are still facing when trying to access their own records? And do you think that this shift will help remove some of those barriers?
I mean, simply put, I think that regardless of what regulations, I mean, HIPAA has a right to access for patients
Yeah.
and has for a long, long time. And the inability of patients to get their data under their HIPAA right is part of the reasoning behind why information blocking became a thing in the first place. Um, so I mean, while
Yeah.
patients are have a right to their data and have for a long time, it's just not easy. It's just not easy to get access. It's not easy for me to get access to my own data, and I live in this world, right? I mean, imagine the majority of the population who doesn't speak health tech like we do. So I think in a
Mhm.
meaningful way, like there's a difference between getting, you know, downloaded documents of your history in all different formats with jargon that makes no sense to you as a layperson versus to me, I think what would be really important to look at is giving patients the right to access their own data through the application of their choice so that they can meaningfully have access to their data in a way that makes sense to them, that they can understand, at the
Yeah.
level they're at, um, take action upon certain things as necessary. I think that's really going to be super important. But I also think that there's a really big disconnect in where the challenges are. From my
Mhm.
understanding, most of the um, information blocking claims have really been made against providers and not against health IT developers or HIEs, HINs. Um, when in fact, I think that in a lot of those cases, it probably was on the technology side that was
Yeah.
causing challenges. But the patients don't know that. The patients don't understand the
Right.
technology that powers their provider offices. They just only know their provider and they know that via whatever method they're trying to get access to their data, it's not working. Something's not working. So where do I go? I go to the source I know. Right.
Yep.
And so I think that we need to sort of look at what some of those examples are that patients are making against provider organizations and see if those really should have been directed elsewhere.
Mhm.
Because there's a technology challenge. It's not, I'm not going to sit here and say that there's no provider challenge. I think that that certainly exists. Um,
Mhm.
but there's absolutely a technology challenge that exists that patients are just, it's not on their radar to know.
Right.
And so I think education and real world examples are going to be really important as this progresses.
Absolutely. Given that like enforcement in prior administrations wasn't a top priority, um, what challenges do we think HHS will face suddenly ramping this up and
Yeah.
ramping up their investigations, hopefully anyway,
Well,
and the penalties for violators now?
I think I mean, sort of like to summarize, I think what I've already said, the challenge is precedent setting and explaining
Hmm.
precedents to the stakeholders involved, especially the actors named in information blocking. And this
Yeah.
is also why I think that we're not going to see penalties just like, shuffled out super fast. I think that, right, look, we're going to be handing out penalties left and right. I think that the government is going to um, begin to try to set precedents in what constitutes information blocking and have different scenarios, and as those it's going to be multiple layers, right? So as those precedencies get set, at that point in time I think we'll start to see penalties come out. But there's a lot that is just simply unknown at this time, and I think
Hmm.
that there's a lot of misinformation and education on what constitutes information blocking, like for real, versus, you know, I'm not getting something my way, but there's an alternate way type of thing. So there's some nuance there that honestly, like, I don't think I really understand very well, that I'd love to get some information back from the federal government on. But I think precedent setting and sharing information to the extent that they can about said precedents is going to be the challenge and the opportunity, if you will, for ASTP and OIG
Yeah,
together.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Do you think this is going to affect trust at all with the stronger enforcement and collaboration, amongst the interop community?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I think anything that, sort of jeopardizes access and where two parties disagree jeopardizes trust.
Yeah,
I don't think that information blocking enforcement is going to create a collaborative environment for resolution. I think it's going to be slapping people on the hand and handing out, monetary fines to encourage other people to not do the same thing. I
right.
think the collaboration comes in with communities like ours, with communities like TEFCA, and with the new CMS line framework, where all of these stakeholders, providers, patient, I mean, we need to have more patients involved, quite frankly, from my opinion, but definitely provider
Mhm.
organizations are involved. Um, Health IT developers are engaged. And I think those are the forums where collaboration to solve some of the technological challenges and put pressure on people. I mean, there's power in numbers. So putting pressure on various organizations who are kind of the outliers and
Yeah.
not doing things the way that most of the people are doing it. I think, that has power too. That has power too.
Mhm.
We've seen actual change happen in these type of collaborative communities. It doesn't happen as quickly or as seamlessly as any of us really want it to. It's messy. It's difficult. But I think that those are the
Right.
places where we'll see collaboration. I don't really see, I mean, you got to think about, like, in court, a plaintiff and a defendant typically in a contentious battle, like, are not going to go come up with ways to collaborate in the future. They're
Yeah.
probably pretty angry at each other and both thinking that their sides are right. And so
Yeah.
not to say that info blocking results in a civil case, although it could, and we've seen some of that happen. But I still think that there's other places for these stakeholders to collaborate. And I would say, if you're not doing that and you're one of these stakeholders, start doing that. Like,
Right.
don't just be
Yes.
insular. Data exchange is not insular. We have to work with our competitors. We have to work outside of ourselves to make this really work. And the partners that we think are doing the best job at this are the ones that show up to the table and have difficult
Yep.
conversations. Those are the ones who are really making progress. And the people who are on the outside or who don't really show up, who don't really participate, I think those are the ones who are going to have the greatest challenges with
Yeah.
this.
100%. How do you see this aligning with the newly formed CMS health tech ecosystem?
I mean, with that, I think there's still so much to be defined with the CMS aligned frameworks.
Yeah.
Not even off the ground yet, just sort of still in this ideation mode.
Yeah.
But I do think it's just doubling down on promoting data access.
Yep.
And we love to see it, which is why we participated. It's why we pledged. Like, even though it isn't completely formed yet, it's still, like I said, still in that kind of ideation phase. It's still just another opportunity to promote data access and to, again, bring in new stakeholders. There was a lot of people at the CMS event who we already knew, who we've
Yeah.
already been collaborating with over the years. But there were a lot of new faces too, which was fantastic. And it takes, a push from somebody as big as Medicare to be like, yeah, come to the party. Let's have this conversation. So I think that was fantastic. And then additionally, like Medicare committing to making data available is also huge. I mean, it's very in the spirit of, I think it was Mickey Tripathi who was like, we don't say information blocking, we say information sharing. I think that's what he said. It was information, so whatever the opposite of blocking is. I'll call it information unblocking, right? It's very in the spirit of that, which we're here for and we love. So bravo, like, let's keep going.
Yeah. I mean, full circle, bringing it back to Commonwealth, what does this mean for our members, both now and future?
Yeah, I mean, we've been aware of this for a while. It's sort of in our ethos to break down barriers to exchange and not build them up.
Yep.
It's been at the core of who we are. But I do have to just say before I answer that question, I just had this like flash in my mind. I've been talking about information blocking for many years. It came out at the end of 2016. And I remember in 2017, maybe late 2017, I was working at Greenway Health, an EHR company, a named actor in information blocking. And I had a general counsel who I remember made a PowerPoint slide that just said $1 million, like huge text. Because he follows me on LinkedIn. So shout out to you. You know who you are. Fantastic guy. But I just remember this like $1 million, like huge text, bold. And that motivates people. I mean, it was motivating us back then.
Right.
I think it's very present when you see the word enforcement. It's very present in your mind, but no, in all seriousness, like Commonwealth, we've been about patient access. We've been about breaking down barriers to provider exchange since day one. So like anything else, I think we're going to continue to follow it very closely. I'm very interested to see what happens from here. I'm very interested to learn from the information that ASTP and OIG have. And I would be, welcome that conversation with them publicly. But I don't think it means too much for us today, although we'll continue to watch it and we'll adjust and pivot, as necessary, as we see more things come out about it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, to kind of wrap us up here today, I just wanted to remind everybody that the government's determination SOP that we talked about 2 weeks ago, last episode, they're still seeking feedback. You can submit feedback until September 17th, so that is open. I can drop the link in the comments for you. Let's see here.
Yeah.
Okay, so just a reminder on that. And then, do you guys know what's coming up very soon, like in 10 days? If you don't, it's our fall summit. We will be in Indianapolis, September 22nd through 23rd. Registration is open still for virtual options. So if you want to listen in, tune in with us that day, next day, you can still register for your virtual ticket. You don't want to miss it. Our agenda is fully baked now. You can see all of our speakers, topics, everything for all the sessions on our agenda. And we hope to see you there either virtually or in person. And then just a note that our next show is the week of the summit. So we'll be off that week from the show, but we'll be back in October and I will keep you posted on the socials of our next topic. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.